Kieran Trippier is Madrid bound. Atletico Madrid have paid £20 million for the Tottenham fullback. So a couple of things to look at. He's been linked with a move away. A disappointing season by his standards, coming off a very good World Cup for England. And now a move to foreign shores. What do you make of that?
Interesting. Listen, Kieran Trippier is a very good attacking right back. I feel he's got a flaw in him, and you saw that particularly towards the end of last season. And it doesn't really surprise me that Pochettino wants to go in a different direction, whether it's Sergio Aurier, and Aurier can somehow get the better of the injury issues that's plagued them for the last few months, or whether they go back into the transfer market to find somebody to replace him. That won't surprise me either. It did surprise me a little bit that Atletico Madrid was the destination, given the amount of changes that they've made, particularly to their back four, given the fact that Simeone and that focus on defensive responsibility and duty. I'm not sure that somebody as attack-minded, maybe lacking a little bit of defensive discipline, was the right fit for Simeone.
It must be an interesting fit in terms of energy levels, because it's one of the most important aspects of Pochettino's team, right? The fullback areas. He asks a lot of his players physically. He must have players identified that who want to fill that role. And you mentioned Aurier, but maybe there's one or two others that he's got his eyes on at a younger level. Obviously, Trippier is going to be 29 in September.
Yeah, they certainly have a lot of talent coming through from the youth levels, and we've seen them introduced sparingly over the last couple of seasons, though I don't think any of them are ready to step in fully just yet. And again, we have to see what the situation is with Aurier, but given how sparingly he played last season, I'm not going to put all my eggs into that basket either. So right now, as we sit, I can only assume that Pochettino has got his eye on someone. I haven't seen any reliable speculation about that. But at the same time, I kind of felt that Trippier was going to be leaving well before the end of last season. So it doesn't surprise me that we're sitting now talking about Trippier at Pasha's new. Maybe it surprises me a little bit that we're not quite sure who's going to fill that gap.
He's filling in a sort of a defensive rebuild at Atletico Madrid with the players that they've let go already this summer. Exciting times going forward as well, bringing in Joao Felix. But it's going to be a very interesting project that Trippier's going to have to fit in and adjust to. How do you think he'll do?
We'll have to see. We'll have to see. I know that's sitting on the fence a little bit, but you mentioned the energy levels and the expectation playing under Pochettino. It'll be similar under Diego Simeone. He will be covering just as much ground. The questions around Trippier, for me, is not about that. It's not about him going forward. It's not about how much ground he covers or how quickly he covers that ground. It's just sometimes I feel his concentration slips. And you cannot afford for that to happen as often as maybe it did over the last few months, when you're playing in a team like Atletico Madrid, when you're competing at the highest levels of the Champions League, as he did with Spurs, when there is so little to give between clubs like Atleti and Real, who themselves going through a rebuild, a little bit of bigger gap between Atleti and Barcelona. I'm not sure that even they are confident that they can close that gap. So it really is an interesting time, given, as you mentioned, Joao Felix and some of those acquisitions, how Atletico Madrid will look going forward. But given how good they'd been at the back, and now it's a complete overhaul of that back four, I really do want to see how not just Trippier, but everybody adjusts.
It will be a big adjustment for Trippier, playing away from England. Of course, he got his start at Manchester City, now leaving London after 4 years with Spurs. Successful 4 years, but now the expectations very, very high indeed, not slipping one bit under Diego Simeone in La Liga.